joining. My name's Graham Charters. I'm a senior technical staff member at IBM, and I'm the technical product manager for WebSphere and Liberty. And my co-speaker today is Reza Rahman. He's a principal program manager at Microsoft, and he's responsible for Java on the Azure cloud. The session we got today is all about essentially about bringing your enterprise Java applications to the cloud. We're using Azure, OpenLiberty, and OpenShift as examples. So Azure as the public cloud, OpenLiberty as a Java, enterprise Java, Java EE, Jakarta runtime, and OpenShift as a hybrid cloud platform. So it's probably fair to say that cloud is one of the biggest things to happen to our industry for many, many years, probably the biggest thing since the creation of the internet. And we hear a lot about how to create new cloud native applications and techniques and technologies for that. But the reality is the majority of applications running on public cloud today weren't written as cloud native applications. They originated on premises. Also, the majority of companies or enterprises are adopting multiple clouds and even mixing public cloud with private clouds. So it's very much a hybrid multi-cloud environment. And lastly, the rate at which applications are moving to the cloud is not showing any sign of slowing. And in fact, in this particular survey, 59% expected most, if not all, of their applications to be on the public cloud by the end of this year. So when we look at technologies that are proving successful in the cloud, I think two of the big winners are containers and Kubernetes. So containers for lightweight virtualization and Kubernetes for orchestration of those containers. And in this particular Red Hat survey, the vast majority of responders said they are using containers either in development or production. Again, the majority said they actually expected their container use to increase over the next year. And probably the most interesting one is essentially 2/3 said that they see Kubernetes as either very or extremely important when it comes to cloud native applications. So if we think back to what I was saying about most applications in the cloud actually having originated on premises, and if we think about those applications being in Java, then the chances are they were written in Java EE. Now, Java EE has been going through a bit of an evolution over the past few years. So Oracle contributed Java EE to Eclipse, and the result was something called Eclipse Jakarta EE. We've just released Jakarta EE 9.1. Jakarta EE 10 is slated for early next year. What this means is actually Jakarta EE provides a nice path forward to protect your investment in your existing Java EE applications. But also, as we start rolling out new technologies in Jakarta EE 10, it provides a nice environment for building new modern enterprise applications. And then if we couple that with the work that's been done and being done around the Eclipse MicroProfile technology, and blend those together, you have two possibilities. You can extend your existing enterprise applications with capabilities that help them work better in cloud environments, expose APIs, consume APIs, or you can start with the microprofile perspective and create net new enterprise applications, net new microservices. So if we look at the Jakarta EE community, there are a number of different implementations that are already certified for Jakarta EE as being compatible. On the left-hand side, those are shown, and on the right-hand side, we can see the latest ones certified for Jakarta EE 9.1. And I've just highlighted my favorite runtime, which is OpenLiberty. That's a certification of the beta for 9.1, and we fully expect to GA and certify that in the not too distant future. So why might you want to pick OpenLiberty for the destination of your applications in the cloud? So I think when I took on the Liberty product management role, I did it because I actually think Liberty is great technology, and I wanted to help people be successful with it. And what I did is try to identify what the key reasons were why I thought Liberty was great. And so I've got this list of 6 reasons, which can kind of be condensed down into kind of 3 core messages. The first one is that Liberty will save you money, essentially. So the combination of Liberty and the Eclipse OpenJ9 JVM gives you an extremely efficient runtime. It uses about half the memory of other runtimes. In this particular comparison between Tomcat and Liberty, uses half the memory and gives you twice the throughput. So that can actually equate to a 4 times saving in terms of efficiency. So you can reduce your cloud usage by 3/4 essentially. You can also tailor the runtime to fit exactly the application's needs, which is a best practice for microservices. You're not wasting any disk space, wasting any memory for capabilities that aren't used. The next two, zero migration and continuous delivery, are really tailored to help you as you evolve the way you develop and deploy applications through increased automation and continuous integration and continuous delivery. Liberty has two capabilities that really help with that. The first is zero migration. Zero migration basically says if you don't change your application code or don't change your configuration, then it will continue to work as you move up versions of Liberty or move up releases of Liberty. So you're no longer required to do costly migrations just to stand still. You can just pick up the latest releases and essentially eliminate your technical debt. Continuous delivery. So to fit with the zero migration story, we actually release Liberty every 4 weeks. We roll in fixes to the previous release into the next release. So as you keep in step with the releases of Liberty, essentially you're picking up the security fixes, any performance enhancements and so on without having to do any additional effort. Lastly, Kubernetes optimized and developer experience are all about helping you develop and deploy applications in Kubernetes environments. So Kubernetes optimized, we self-tune, or Liberty self-tunes itself. So if you're deploying or building a container and you don't know what the environment's going to be like, or maybe you're deploying into multiple environments, different public clouds, or deploying on premises, it's difficult to tune that thing for all possibilities. Whereas with Liberty, you don't actually have to do that tuning. It will monitor its performance and adjust its thread pool appropriately. We build production-ready container images, and we have capabilities that help you with deploying in Kubernetes environments as an Open Liberty operator, source to image builder, build pack, and so on. And on the developer experience side, we have integration with popular IDEs. We have a rapid inner loop developer experience, which means basically you start it up in what's called dev mode. You make code changes, configuration changes. They're automatically reflected in the running server. And that works in containers as well. So essentially you can do your development in a container environment that's going to be close to production. So what we're going to talk about, or what Rez is going to demonstrate shortly, is part of a collaboration between IBM and Microsoft. We're going to show, or Rez is going to show, Open Liberty, deploying a Jakarta EE application to Open Liberty on the Azure Red Hat OpenShift environment. But we also are working towards supporting WebSphere Liberty and Open Liberty in Azure Kubernetes service and traditional WebSphere on Azure virtual machines. And once you're in the Azure cloud, then you have a bunch of other services available to you. You can integrate with Azure Active Directory, Azure PostgreSQL, and so on. And in the demonstration, Rez is going to show integrating with Postgres. So just a few links to help you if you want to find out more. On the left-hand side are some articles to read around more detail on Liberty and choosing runtimes and modernization and so on. In the middle are links out to guidance showing how to use Liberty on Azure Red Hat OpenShift or on Azure AKS. Or if you're interested in the things we're doing, you can register to be notified as we add enhancements and so on. And then on the right-hand side, just general guidance to help you get started with Liberty. So there's a getting started guide. There are a number of cloud-hosted guides. These are guides that you can use without installing any prerequisites. And then the last link is just to the full set of guides on Open Liberty IO. So you can learn more about Jakarta EE, MicroProfile, Kubernetes, containers, and so on. So with that, I'll hand over to Reza, and he can do the demo. Thank you.
Thanks, Graham. So what we're going to do now is put some of this stuff in action and see how it looks like when you begin to demo it. So as Graham mentioned, what we have is certainly what we have today, right at this moment, is step-by-step guidance on how to get your Open Liberty or WebSphere Liberty application up and running on Azure Red Hat OpenShift. What you see there is a guide that he shared a link for. Now, when you take a look at this will certainly work, and it will be pretty close to what you would have as a native Java or native ARO or OpenShift experience. But almost half of this guide is actually just going to be a matter of boilerplate setup of Azure resources, things like infrastructure, networking, and permissions, and then OpenShift itself. So what we are thinking right at this moment is we can streamline some of this experience and remove most of the boilerplate through what is called an Azure Marketplace solution. What an Azure Marketplace solution is that it is a way of a UI-driven wizard that lets you do lets you specify some of the more boilerplate things, and takes away most of that initial setup tasks so that you can really focus on application development and application management. So the marketplace solution template for Liberty on ARO is still not out yet. It will be out probably by the time you are listening to this talk, or in about, let's say, about a month from now. So do be on the lookout for that, and we will certainly make an announcement for this so you can take a look at it. What I'm going to do right now is give you a preview of how that actually looks like. So like all marketplace solution templates, I'm going to just hit create to get the wizard initiated. So this experience is very similar if you're already familiar with marketplace solution templates. So you'll specify a subscription where you want your application deployed, and I'm going to increase the font just a bit so you can see this a bit better. And you'll specify a resource group. A resource group is really nothing much more than a collection of Azure resources. You can think about it sort of as your mini data center for that application. You'll specify an Azure region where you want to do the deployment. In this case, probably East US makes the most sense. You could certainly choose Western Europe and pretty much anywhere else in the world. There will be, as I said, a bunch of resources created for you behind the scenes. You cannot over and over do the Azure login. So who needs to do this work on your behalf is a Azure managed identity. So you'll need to specify an Azure managed identity for that. I've got a couple of ones created here, and I could pick one. We can just pick one just for the sake of it, just to show you. The next step is going to be actually configuring the cluster. So in order to configure the cluster, you can do one or two things. You can either create a ARO cluster from scratch, or you can actually bring in your existing ARO cluster and have the marketplace solution template do the rest of the setup for you, so you can get ready to deploy your Open Liberty application, including installing the operator on that cluster. But if you create a new cluster, you'll need to specify your OpenShift poll secret. You get that from your OpenShift portal, which you will need in order to create an ARO cluster. You also need to specify an application ID and a client secret. Basically, it's very similar to OpenID Connect authentication against your Azure AD directory. Basically, actually, really, that is precisely what it is, and it's very easy to create. There's linked instructions on how you do that. And as you know, if you've deployed OpenShift before, it comes with something called the kubeadmin, basically the administrator for that ARO cluster deployment. You don't want to be using that. It's an anti-pattern to be using that account for usual application deployments. So what we have here in the template is basically we're creating a specific namespace for the application within that cluster, as well as creating a user account for you to manage that application and manage that namespace. So you need to just specify username and password here. Once you've done that, you can configure your application. You can deploy an initial application if you like. The way we have it set up right now, you can basically upload a WAR file and deploy that with your initial deployment. We won't do that for the demo because the application that I'll be deploying is not just a simple WAR file. I will need some configuration of the image, namely to connect up to Azure PostgreSQL database. So I'm going to say no. And as you can see, you have choices as to what you really want to deploy. You can deploy either Open Liberty or Western Liberty, and you can deploy that at the moment with either Java SE 8 or Java SE 11. We will add support for Java SE 17 here. In fact, I believe only today Open Liberty announced its official support for Java SE 7, Java SE 17. And then you can also specify how many replicas do you want of the application. 2 is a default, and basically what I'm going to pick. So I'm not actually going to hit review and create here because it's going to take a little bit of time for the actual deployment to happen. It takes about half hour. So I've created it beforehand in the morning. So this is ultimately what you will get once you do the deployment. We need to reduce the zoom a little bit here. So in your resource group, you will have an ARO cluster. There's the ARO cluster up and running, OpenShift cluster, as well as a VNet. So the entire application is running inside of a virtual network, if you will, again, your data center, if you will, on Azure. So once all that is done, you will be able to log on to the OpenShift cluster console, just like I am here. And once you do that, you'll see that there is an OpenShift container registry that we'll use to post the actual application image, and that's already been set up for you. And there's a namespace that is set up for you as well. And that is the namespace right at this moment. Aside from the namespace, let's pick the project real quick. There's also the Open Liberty operator that is installed for you. There's the Open Liberty operator installed on your behalf. Now, in order to actually do the deployment, I'm going to need to do that from the command line. So I'm going to get the login command from the OpenShift console here. And that's the login command so that I may be able to use the OpenShift command line. Okay, and that should have succeeded. And as you can see, I have access to those two projects. I'll go ahead and deploy and make my WAR file here. The application code is downloaded, and I'll just do a maven clean package. Okay, so now I have my WAR file. Now, once I have my WAR file, I need to wrap this WAR file up into a Docker file. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to do a Docker build, and I just did it earlier in the morning, so I should have it handy. Okay, so I'm simply doing a Docker build of the Docker file. If there's time, I will show you the Docker image. It's relatively simple, but I'll run it, and you'll see from the output what it is actually doing. So I'm starting with the Open Liberty image here as my base image. I'm simply adding the Postgres jar file. I'm adding the server.xml, and really just server.xml only has a database configuration for the most part. And there's the WAR. I'm also adding the WAR file that I just built. Now, in order to validate that this is working, I'm going to go ahead and run this Docker image locally. I'll show you the command for that also. So it's Docker run, and giving it the image name that I just, local image name Jakarta EE Cafe v1 that I just created, running it on port 9080, and then specifying the database information that I already have up and running on Azure. So this is Azure Postgres, and I'm specifying the username, password, and so on. So let's go ahead and give this a run and validate that our application is okay, or rather our Docker image is okay. Okay, and that actually all looks okay. So let me show you the application real quick. I won't have time to show you the code, but basically this is a Jakarta, very vanilla Jakarta EE application. It's a CRUD application. And basically it uses the usual typical Jakarta EE stack: JSF, CDI, EJB, JPA, and so on. And also there's a JAX-RS endpoint. In fact, let me show you the JAX-RS endpoint in a moment. But before I do that, I also have MicroProfile health enabled on this application. So I'll show you that. And I obviously made a typo. All right, so as you can see, it's showing that the application is up and running. There's also liveness and readiness endpoints here also. So it says there's live, and I can do ready also. But let me show you the OpenAPI interface. So as I said, you saw the UI, but it's actually backed up by a REST interface. Let's go ahead and make a REST invocation here. Try it out, execute. And there's the data that you also already saw on screen. It's an XML format by default. I could change it to return JSON instead. Let's re-execute that JSON query, and now it's showing in JSON format. So let me go ahead and Control C this application. I think we've validated that the Docker image is created. We've run the application through Docker. The next step that I'm going to do, and I'm going to take this from my cheat sheet here, is tag this image. So I've created a local image. Now I'm going to tag it so that I can actually push it onto the container registry. I'll show you the syntax for it. So it's Docker tag, and then specifying the local image name, giving it the registry name, which is also going to be provided for you by the Marketplace Solution template. And then basically also specifying the project namespace, as you can see here. So we'll go ahead and tag this image. So now that it is tagged, it's ready to be uploaded. Before I can upload, I'll need to log on onto the container registry. So I'll do a Docker login in order to do that. And by the way, this is all specified in the step-by-step guidance. So you can do this stuff yourself today, following the how-to guide. Tomorrow, hopefully, be able to do it using the marketplace solution template. Let's do the Docker login. Now I'm ready to push my image so that my login succeeded. Okay, so do the Docker push. Syntax for this is also relatively straightforward. The push should happen really quickly because for the most part, everything should be cached. The only thing that's really changing here is just the thin var, which means the Docker push will happen pretty quickly. So it's just Docker push and giving it the name of the container registry as well as the full path to the image. And of course, when you're doing demos, nothing goes as you may expect. I hope the push actually succeeds. All right, while that is going on, I'm going to show you the deployment descriptor for this application real quick. So here's the deployment descriptor. It is using the Open Liberty operator. As you'll see in a moment, we'll do the deployment through the operator, in fact. There's the image name. There's the database information for connectivity. And then we are using, remember I showed you the liveness and readiness endpoints. Those liveness and readiness endpoints are actually being configured in ARO also. So ARO will be taking a look at those images. Endpoints. Okay, my push has happened. I'm going to go ahead and deploy the application now, and we're going to do that through the OpenShift portal. So I'm going to just Control C or copy this content, and we'll go over to the OpenShift portal. We'll take a look at the operator, and we'll see that there is no applications right at this moment, no operands found. So we're going to go ahead and create one. Okay, we're gonna remove the default YAML that is put in here. I always like to double check things in the form view, so we'll take a look here. The name is right, the labels are right, the image is correct always, and I want 2 copies of this, and I do want a route created for me. We'll see the route in action in just a moment. So I'm going to hit create. That should have started the deployment. I'm going to monitor that the deployment actually is happening cleanly. And as I can see, I do have 2 instances of these containers created. And they're not in ready state quite yet. They should be in ready state in just a moment. Okay, so both of them are ready now. I'm going to go to the deployments, and those look like they're in healthy state. I'm going to go over to the networking and take a look at the services, and the service also looks like it's in good state. So we're just going to finally go over to the route. So this was the route, published route that is created for us. I'm going to go and explore this one. And as you can see, Open Liberty is up and running, and we'll go ahead and access the application now. All right, so the application is also up and running okay. Just for good measure, I'll show you the Open API running here as well. Okay, so there's the Open API interface if you'd like to try that out, that also should be possible. And the health endpoint should also be accessible from here. All right, so I think that is all the time that we have right now. Before I wrap up, I'm just going to very quickly show you the Docker file as well as the application. Let me see if I can navigate to my Docker Hub quickly here. Okay, so there's a Docker file. Why my internet connection is not happy with me. I think I just have a bit too many things open at the moment. So this it's starting from OpenLiberty, copying over the jar file, copying over the server.xml, and dropping the var, as you can see. And if my internet cooperates, I'm going to also show you the form XML here in a moment. So as you can see, it's just a Jakarta EE application. That's about it. The rest of the dependencies are on MicroProfile, and those are at runtime. All right, so that's about it. So again, today you can do exactly what we just did and much more with Liberty and ARO using the step-by-step guidance that we have published jointly with IBM. And hopefully, by the time you're listening to this talk, or in roughly late or early November or so, we should also have the marketplace entry up and running for you as well to support Liberty on ARO. And that does quite a bit of removing the boilerplate. In fact, you saw in the demo that I didn't really do very much infrastructure setup really whatsoever. I just mostly focused on the application development, deployment, and management experience. All right, so thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And hopefully you'll find the links that we shared earlier useful, and hopefully you'll reach out to us and if you need any help with setting up Liberty on ARO.
So we just got a few minutes for questions. Which orders? We got a few questions that have been given to us. Reza, hang on, I'll take the first question, I think. So the first question is the solution shown released yet? Not yet. It's very, very close. When it goes live, you'll notice there are some differences because we've been having some design discussions about how it should work and so on, and involving it to the point where we'll have what we consider the kind of MVP for the offering to be available. That should hopefully be available very soon. So you can actually register those what we call a contact me offer on the Azure marketplace. You can register there to be made aware when the offer will become available. Do you want to take the next one, Reza?
Yeah, sure. So there's an interesting question. It says, is it possible to have OpenAPI tools not exposed, kind of runtime mode only? Does this make any improvements in memory overhead? So to answer your first question, don't be too confused by my demo, right? The convenience of the OpenAPI UI really is for development, right? So you would really use that API mostly for your own local development, or even if you try to do a development and deployment on your OpenShift or Kubernetes cluster, that's only there for your convenience. It's not recommended that you use, you have exposed that to your end users. So mostly what you will do is actually have external tools, and there are OpenAPI viewers available out there that basically read the values that you expose in your OpenAPI, or you have an OpenAPI repository that you take your generated OpenAPI documents and publish it there. So yeah, the OpenAPI capabilities that are there in MicroProfile, that's mostly think of it as a developer convenience. Overhead-wise, not much, honestly. The OpenAPI capabilities in MicroProfile, it's pretty lightweight. I wouldn't be too concerned about memory footprint or anything there.
Right. Yeah. Okay, we have 1 more minute, so we probably need to be quite selective in terms of the next question. Just looking back through them. Maybe take the licensing one. So how does licensing work? So you need entitlement to use the Azure cloud, so you'll have a subscription available in order to do that. So you can use the Azure Red Hat OpenShift environment, or when the AKS Azure Kubernetes service option is available, you'll need subscription to be able to use that. In terms of the WebSphere Liberty or OpenLiberty license, well, OpenLiberty is open source, so you don't need any license in order to do that. WebSphere Liberty is a commercial product. The things that are available out there are available for trial use, so you can use it without having any entitlement, and then purchase entitlement afterwards if you're happy with the solution. But of course, if you just want to try it all for free, OpenLiberty is open source under the EPL license with no restrictions.
So there are more questions. We are unfortunately out of time. So please do interact with us, online. Both Graham and I are pretty easy to find. especially on Twitter. So
Yep.
I hope you got something out of the session. Really appreciate it. And yeah, the main point is to connect with you. So do connect with
Yep.
us later on.
Thank you.